Have you guys found the patch notes? I saw these like ruthless notes that came out, but I haven't really found any meaningful patch notes. Can you guys let me know if you find them? Because I sure seem to not be able to find them. So in this video, we're going to be talking about the Path of Exile 3.22 update patch notes changes, what I think is changing, what you should be thinking about, and all of the stuff that you need to know. This is not going to be like going in-depth nitty-gritty on every single little itty-bitty thing that exists. This is going to be the relevant information. Also of note, I'm going to completely skip the Ruthless changes. I don't care about Ruthless whatsoever. I pretty much have the same opinion as Ventrua does on these patch notes. More Ruthless changes than actual players that play Ruthless, and that is how I feel about it as well. Kind of ridiculous that there's that many. At least a third of the patch notes are Ruthless. So the last thing I'm going to say about it, it's really kind of sad because Ruthless ended up getting more changes to their game than we did. Hopefully in 3.22 we do get a decent amount of like new cool uniques, and a lot of the extra things that like we can apply to our skill tree is going to be really impactful for builds. I don't know that it's going to shift the meta in any meaningful way. I kind of talked about my thoughts on the Trial of the Ancestor League already. However, we do have a bunch of new support gems here. Now, we don't have numbers for these yet, and unfortunately, a lot of these are going to be very, very dependent upon numbers. Without numbers, I would say over half of these, we can't even tell if they're good or not. So Controlled Blaze, supported melee attack skills, providing them with a chance to ignite, and supported skills deal more ignite damage for each ignite inflicted on them, but less damage. One big thing that it seems like GGG is trying to do right now is they're trying to make Ignite Melee a thing, and I think that it might work. There is the framework for Ignite Melee to exist right now. They've added a bunch of crazy changes. I'll talk about them as we go through, but I think some kind of Ignite Melee build is possible here. We've got Corrupt and Cry, which we already knew about. It makes it so that Warcry skills and the skills that they exert cause corrupted blood to be affected by it, to be on enemies, which is pretty decent. We got some more information about the trauma support. We knew that this was going to be a thing. However, we see that it says supported attacks deal added physical damage per trauma. It doesn't say anything here about dealing more damage. So I'm thinking that the trauma support is a massively nerfed version of the trauma that you get from Bone Shatter, meaning that Bone Shatter is most likely just going to still be better. Depending on the numbers here, this is either going to be pretty decent because added physical damage per trauma will be pretty solid when you stack it up really high, depending on what those numbers are, but it's missing the more damage, which is pretty huge. Just have to wait for numbers. Volatility is support attack skills, causing them to deal more maximum attack damage, but less minimum attack damage. Supported skills also deal increased damage. This is another target at Ignite and Bleed and things like this. This Volatility gem will be very good for builds that are trying to do one big type of ailment, meaning that this is going to be pretty good for Bleed mainly. I think it'll probably also work for Ignite. We got Flamewood. It seems like GGG is trying to make it so that like defensive totems can be a build, is what it seems like, because this makes totems like trigger a firing like a mortar of stuff up into the air, which falls on a target and deals area damage. Seems fine. A new gem that was leaked earlier today, which is pretty cool. This is essentially a blessing type aura for minion builds, meaning that you can apply this aura to a minion. It loses a percentage of its life as physical damage per second, and everyone around you, including I think yourself, gets that aura. Pretty cool. Actually a pretty big upgrade for minion builds. It's also potentially going to find some way to be broken, I'm sure, where you can just do like a 2 or 3 link to get a free blessing on a minion that just runs around you at all times. Probably something like that. Returning projectiles, we still don't know the numbers on this, so we don't know if it's good or not. I hope that it goes down to like 50% less damage, because that would make this at least somewhat decent of a support. We've got Sadism, which supports any skills that hits enemies, causing damaging ailments inflicted by them to deal damage faster, but causes the inflicted ailments to have less duration. This is going to be good on something that stacks a lot of different ailments. So the idea here is that this is going to make it so that like clear will be stronger, because most of the time, say if you're clearing with a poison ability, it's more important that like the first couple of poisons that hit them deal more damage rather than like trying to stack like 30 poisons on something while you're clearing. So this will be pretty good for like poison clear skills and things like that. We've got Locust Mines. These look cool, but they feel kind of weird when I think about them. It essentially turns your mine into like an attack that shoots at your character instead of like at random things around you. So you have to like target the attacks with yourself, meaning you probably need to put yourself in more danger, which means that hopefully this is a good damage modifier. We'll see. We got Frigid Bond. This supports link skills. I think is going to be completely useless for 99% of people unless the numbers are insane. We have Fresh Meat support, which is support skills that creates minions. Minions created by supported skills gained Wakened Fury. We don't know what this is. As far as I know, I Googled it. I didn't see anything about Wakened Fury, but they also get Adrenaline for 10% of their duration up to a maximum of 10 seconds. So if your minions last for 100 seconds, they will have 10 seconds of adrenaline. If they last for 10 seconds, they will have 1 second of adrenaline. So this is a pretty good support for minions. I think it's going to be pretty solid. I would assume permanent minions will probably get the full 10 seconds if I would have to guess. We've got Sacrifice, supports spell skills that deal damage with hits and have no reservation. So these spells sacrifice a percentage of your current life to gain additional chaos damage based on how much life was sacrificed. Can't be like orb skills, brand skills, channeling skills, vol skills, traps or mines, skills of minions. We have to see numbers on this. There's not really anything that's going to be able to tell us what this is. However, added chaos damage to spell skills could be pretty powerful. However, it's going to make it so that we have to scale percentage of our current life. We'll have to see what the numbers on this are. We've got Spellblade. This is okay, but we really need to know the numbers. Supported spells that hit enemies, causing them to have added spell damage equal to a percentage of the damage of equipped one-hand melee weapons. If 2 weapons are equipped, each contributes 60% as much added damage. So depending on the numbers here, this could be really good. I hope that the numbers are pretty high, because otherwise this is just Battle Mage, but slightly better if you dual wield. So we'll see, because it says to a percentage of damage, right? Hopefully that's a high number. Devour, this kind of looks like a PoE 2 support gem, to be honest with you. Maybe there's some cool interactions that can come from it. Otherwise, it seems pretty useless for most things. We got the one designed item by the Crucible boss kill event. The rest of this stuff is kind of whatever. We went through most of these Atlas passive skills. I might make a video later, but I kind of feel like a lot of these aren't that impactful, so we'll see. I'll just, like I said, go quickly through the ones we didn't know about yet. So we've got Endless Tide. Beyond portals in your maps cannot spawn unique bosses, and beyond portals in your maps have 50% less merging radius. What I'm assuming this means is you just get a lot of little beyond mobs and way less big beyond mobs. We have a ritual node called Arbitrary Tenants. Favors at ritual altars in your maps randomly cost between 90% less and 80% more. This could be okay, but the problem that I have with it is that it's going to be one of those like feast or famine type nodes. A lot of the time you're going to get really cool cheap stuff, and a lot of the time you're going to see really cool stuff that you would want to take, but it's going to be so expensive that you can't even set it aside, right? I don't know that this is going to be good. On average, it seems like it would be good, but I think it's just going to be more frustrating than anything. Then we have Immutable Dogma, which grants cannot reroll favors at ritual altars in your maps, and monsters sacrifice at ritual altars in your maps grant 100% more tribute. I'm not sure at first glance whether or not this is good or bad. Rerolling favors is typically pretty good. I'm assuming this is probably going to be bad because most of the time the stuff that you get at ritual altars is pretty bad, but this would allow you to take the big stuff if it did pop more often, but it's not very often. We've got harvest crops in your maps contain only tier 1 plants, and harvesting crops in your maps is a chance to upgrade the tier of plants of different colors. Very interesting to see what the percentage of this is, because it could make, like, if you do a harvest in a map that has a bunch of different plants, this could be very good. You could focus on upgrading one particular kind of color and get a ton out of it at the last one, but not particularly sure. Hope to see what the chance percentage of this is. We have Bold Undertakings, which grants Fortune Favors the Brave, applies an additional random option, and 100% more cost of Fortune Favors the Brave. This is good if there's a bunch of really good map mods on there, and you are using a strategy that Fortune Favors the Brave is useful on. Otherwise, kinda useless. It's definitely good if there's lots of good map mods, but on average, really dependent. Really super dependent, probably okay on average though. We also have Overloaded Circuits, which grants league map crafting options. Also choose 3 random notable Atlas passive skills associated with that league to treat as allocated. So this one is interesting because depending on how this works, if it can choose only the ones that are not already allocated, you could min-max this pretty hard. Meaning that if there were like 3 specific notables that you could force this to take, it could make your map pretty powerful. Like, say if you wanted to focus specific essence nodes, you could just take only one of the essence nodes, and then it would take all of the other essence nodes whenever you crafted essence on your map device. It does increase the cost of map crafting options, so I'm assuming that's the way that works. But we'll have to see. I'm curious to see if that's how that happens. We have Meticulous Appraiser, which grants modifiers the quantity of items found in your maps instead apply to rarity of items found in your maps at 300% of their value. I'm curious how this is going to function, because this, at first glance, looks cool. Like, it's going to make boss rushing maybe kind of crazy. We'll see. I'm not 100% certain. We've got the 7th Gate, which grants all possible League map crafting options are available while 6 gateways are allocated. If you're not understanding what this means, as far as I can tell, typically there's like a set of like League map crafting options, like Kyrix map options that you've got. If you take this keystone and then you allocate all 6 gateways on the atlas, you should be able to craft whatever option you want, regardless of if it's available or not for that league. We also do have the holding alt and a currency item will now show the count in the trade window. We knew about that from the reveals. Now, Forbidden Sanctum is coming back. However, there are some pretty big changes in here, and not all of them are super happy changes. So we're going to have to see how this ends up working out, because Forbidden Sanctum has been added to the core game. It's got a maximum level of 83. It's going to be itemized now, so you're going to be able to find them, pick them up, sell them to people, run them, whatever you want to do. Relics themselves are now tradable, meaning that they are probably going to be adjusted for the fact that they're tradable. Now, we know for certain that unique relics are going to be reworked, but completing a Forbidden Sanctum run now requires killing Licia in both her first and second forms, and as I said, reworked and replaced on most unique relics. Now, as far as I know, all of the uniques that are provided from the Forbidden Sanctum, like the actual normal uniques, as far as I can tell, are all the same. They might just be more rare now, potentially. However, they've done some balance changes. Now, they've made it so that primary defenses now have some effect on protecting your resolve, which is a good change, in my opinion. Armor means that you're going to get mitigation, evasion's going to grant you a chance to avoid, and energy shield is going to provide you with a resolve Aegis, so it's going to work the same way that it normally would. However, they've made it more difficult. The difficulty of the Forbidden Sanctum has been increased, especially in the later floors. Monsters generally have more life and deal slightly more resolve damage. Rare monsters can now be found within the Forbidden Sanctum, and completing a room now requires killing all rare monsters present. That's a pretty big nerf to how easy it is to go through here. They've also made it so that monsters in the Forbidden Sanctum are immune to damage if there are no players within 100 units of them. This is to stop people from doing those off-screen builds. They've also reviewed the boons and afflictions. They've rebalanced the relic modifiers. They've added more hazards and room variety to the Forbidden Sanctum, and the Forbidden Sanctum has also been adjusted for Ruthless. Now, they've moved a bunch of maps around. I suggest that you read through these if there's any particular map that you care about. It would take me an hour to go through each and every single one of these and talk about the differences and everything that happen. They do keep all the divination cards in, however, some have been changed. There is one pretty big notable change here in that unique maps are no longer offered as a mission when rerolling Kyrix missions with an Explorer Scouting Report. So that is good and bad, I feel. Honestly, the Explorer Scouting Reports are mainly for getting normal map clear anyways, and there is a specific scouting report for unique maps, so this isn't that big of a change. They have made it so that the sextant modifiers that cause the final map boss in each map to drop an additional Shaper, Guardian, Elder Guardian, or Conqueror map have been changed to drop upon completing your map, whatever that might mean for the particular map. They have rebalanced the Vol side zones. As you know, they talked about at ExileCon in the announcement that Vol side zones are now going to be not corrupted if you take a certain keystone, you'll be able to roll them and such. They've added a bunch of unique Vol side zones, which is pretty cool. We're gonna have to see what all that entails, but there's probably some cool stuff in there, hopefully. They've made some Atlas passive tree changes. Shaping the Sea and Shaping the Valley have been removed, and the new Bold Undertakings and Overloaded Circuits keystone have taken their position. So they removed these two, put those two keystones in the middle right there, right? And they've also made 6 Atlas passive skills in the cluster for taking those, which each provide maps found have 5% chance to be 1 tier higher. So about the same that it was before, but those big notable ones are gone now. However, they have added a new maps cluster to the Atlas passive tree with the notable Shaping the World. This partially compensates for the loss of Shaping the Valleys and Shaping the Seas, and it provides map final bosses, and each map has 5% chance to drop an additional connected map, and maps found have 10% chance to be 1 tier higher. Pretty good. I don't think this changes the Wandering Path strategy at all, which I'll talk about in a later video closer to League start once I get all the stuff together. So this should be fine. I think this is most likely just going to be like a wash for the most part. We'll have to see when we get the actual Atlas. Now, they've added in some Beyond clusters. This allows you to have more chance to focus on certain sets of Beyond mobs. Nothing too crazy there. They've added in new Torment clusters. They've done some pretty big changes to the way that Tormented Spirits work. They've also changed some stuff for added Vol side zones, so maybe they have certain kinds of rewards that you're looking for. They have the sturdy construction being changed to have Blight monsters in your maps take 12% increased damage instead of the Blight towers and their minions deal 20% more damage. This is actually a pretty big buff, I feel, if you're going Blight stuff. So they've just removed some of the Delirium stuff because there's that new Keystone that's going to happen. And now let's talk about one of the bigger changes that is happening. 5-ways, seemingly for what their intended purposes were previously, which was just power farming through like TFT, are dead. They have massively nerfed this, okay? Lower zone level, less experience per emblem. It's pretty completely destroyed. I don't think that 5-way like XP farming is going to be a good thing anymore. I don't know where people will move to, maybe to like breach zones or something like that. We'll see what happens with this, but a little sad that Legion 5-ways are getting nerfed so hard, because that kind of means that farming Legion early in the league might kind of be bad, because people aren't going to be buying the Legion stones as much anymore. I don't know. We'll have to see. I might have to find something else to do farming-wise early in the game, because, yeah, this is a pretty big nerf. So they have, like, nerfed the amount of monsters required to kill to get certain Delirium wards and certain maps to, like, balance things out. And Tormented Spirits have gotten a pretty big change. They now have more life, scaling up to 560% more at level 83. This is actually a good thing because you typically don't want to kill the Tormented Spirits. You want them to go inhabit certain enemies. They also have a less damage taken buff that tapers off. So most of the time when you see these Tormented Spirits now, they're actually going to like go and get in enemies and do stuff, which is pretty cool. So they've changed their AI pretty substantially is what it says. They're more aggressively going for monsters and such, and they're trying to get into rares and uniques and things like that. So I'm hoping that Torment is pretty good, or at least worthwhile going forward. Now they have changed some Ascendancy balance stuff. I read through the Guardian and there wasn't really anything I noticed offhand compared to what we already knew. However, one note in the Chieftain was a little bit different, and that was Nemahu Flame's Advance. Now, it provided non-unique jewels cause increases and reductions to other damage types in a large radius to be transformed to apply to fire damage. However, it also gives non-unique jewels cause small and notable passive skills in a large radius to also grant 3 to strength. So depending on how many that is, it's probably okay, but it's also not going to be amazing, I don't think. As far as I know, that is the only thing that's different from what we saw before. Notably, the Ascendant Chieftain keeps 10% increased strength, so I guess that's cool. They noticed some kind of weird bug with the Occultist. I don't really fully understand this. Maybe somebody else will, but I don't. Now, passive skill tree balance. There's a lot of stuff in here that has buffed the way that people are going to be doing Ignite attack-based stuff. So Ignite melee-based stuff a lot as well. Like, they're giving things like nearby enemies are covered in ash if you haven't moved in the past 2 seconds, and hit stun as though dealing 50% more melee fire damage, and ignites from stunning melee hits deal 20% more damage. It's like they're trying to make it so that you'll do like a ruthless like support Ignite build is really what it seems like, because they've changed the ruthless support as well to also affect Ignite. I think this could potentially be good, and it does seem super interesting, but it's going to be one of those, like, we'll have to see how everything pans out once we get the POB stuff. Like, they've added a whole bunch of new clusters. Notably, they did move this particular cluster here. This cluster here has been moved down here, so it is 1 additional point if you were coming to this area. That does kind of suck a little bit for certain things, but it is what it is. And of course, Vengeance Cascade did get heavily changed. It no longer gives projectile speed, it no longer gives attack projectiles return to you or returning projectiles pierce all targets. It instead now provides returning projectiles have 150% increased speed. Now, what does this mean for most Vengeance Cascade abusing builds is that it's probably dead for the most part. However, for particularly bow builds, it is actually somewhat okay still. If you're using the return projectile support in your link, whatever it might be, because it's probably still going to be like a 30 or 40% more multiplier for a lot of builds, if you take this mastery for bows, which says increases and reductions to projectile speed also apply to damage with bows, it makes it so that returning projectiles have 150% increased speed, and they also have 150% increased damage, but it's only returning projectiles, so do keep that in mind. It can offset some of that less damage modifier on that, making it a significantly better support gem choice, most likely. However, as I expected, Steel Champ, particularly the Splitting Steel Champ, rest in peace. On top of that, they decided to randomly destroy anomalous faster projectile support, so Skelly mages, sorry you caught a stray, my guy, and you're pretty much donezo. Also, Karn got target nerfed. Karn's a streamer who plays Bone Shatter, and he's been cooking some new tech with the Strength of Blood keystone with some crazy stuff going on, and they've made it so that it's no longer 1% less damage taken for every 2% recovery per second from leech, but now is 2% additional physical damage reduction for every 3% life recovery per leech. So yeah. New charge mastery, nearby enemies cannot gain power, frenzy, or endurance charges. Could be interesting in a couple very specific circumstances. And they've moved the totems taunt enemies around them for 1 second when summoned into a totem mastery that says 1% of physical attack damage dealt by your totems is leached to you as life. I wish this was just 1% of damage dealt by your totems. I would like that significantly more, but it's only physical damage. So yeah, kind of unfortunate. That would have been really super cool, but physical damage, not so interesting. Now, they've done some other skill changes. Temporal Chains got nerfed a decent amount, so rest in peace, kind of a nerf to poison builds and such. However, they got some other balance buffs and stuff at the same time. Vol Summon Skeletons now summons 1 Skeleton Mage early. I guess that's cool for early Vol Summon Skeletons. Whirling Blades now hits with both weapons and deals 75% of the damage for each weapon. Okay. Big buff to Ruthless support when it comes to hitting with Poison and Ignite, interestingly here. Now, Ruthless support is probably going to be a pretty good link for Poison SRS now, and this is also going to enable, I think, that whole stun, fire, melee, ignite archetype. Ruthless support will be big here because it's going to enable that really big, giant one hit. And if you stun with that hit, which Ruthless has a guaranteed stun in it, you're going to get that 20% more from the notable that's on the tree. Unseen Strike now has no cooldown now, so this could be a cool build. I could see Unseen Strike from the Hidden Blade being significantly more rare now. They added the Orb tag to the Cremation skill gem. Not 100% certain about that. Alberon's Warpath got Summon Skeletons changed. They removed some Delve stuff. They changed the duration of ailments when focus modifier to be nerfed a little bit. Flasks for minions are stronger now. Totems explode on death and standard got absolutely destroyed. I'm not reading any of these ridiculous amount of Ruthless changes. Like, look at this. This is actually just kind of insane how many Ruthless changes there are. Don't care about any of those. Notably, they've removed stun immunity from a bunch of bosses. It says this list includes, but is not limited to, Etziri, Argus, the Vol Omnitech, and Betrayal targets. I wonder how many different ones this includes, like how many different bosses are stunnable now. It's probably not Pinnacle bosses, but could be cool. However, Kitava is still unable to be stunned, so that's interesting. All the Guardians are going to be dropping less influenced items on death, which is kind of sad, but it is what it is. They did increase the outcome for tainted currency from Beyond bosses and reduced it for other Beyond monsters. I think this is to balance that keystone from earlier. And it says monsters that are unable to be damage targeted no longer regenerate life or energy shield or recharge energy shield. Thank goodness. I actually experienced this today in my SSF League Star testing run, where I gave the bosses like more energy shield for the Vol Oversoul, and every time he would go down, he'd come back up with a bunch of energy shield again. This is super nice. I really like this change a lot, actually. They did nerf the Kitava skeletons around the Belfry boss. They're magic now instead of rare. And temp chains for monsters also got nerfed, so that's pretty cool. We already knew the League mods from Kirik. They added a bunch of added, quest rewards for all the new skills and such. They did some minor user interface updates, which are pretty cool. Nothing super crazy there. And then a bunch of bug fixes. Now, notably, there are a couple interesting bug fixes in here. For example, taunted enemies were actually kind of broken. They were not receiving 10% less damage penalty. They were actually dealing 10% more, as far as I could tell. That was to other targets, so taunt was kind of broken. There's this one that says, fix the bug where the Reservation passive mastery that provides increased damage for each of your aura or herald skills was providing double the effect that it should. So that node is actually just bad now, because it was already kind of whatever before, but it was double the effect that it was before. So it might actually just kind of be bad. They also fixed the bug with mana forged arrow supports that was not tracking mana spent on triggered bow skills not supported by mana forged arrows. I don't know what this means, but somebody will probably be able to tell you. They also changed some weird stuff that's happening with the snipe support. I also don't fully understand this because I haven't used the snipe support a lot, but I'm sure something will probably come from this. And that is going to be it for the video. Those are the patch notes. That's all the interesting stuff that I think that you should know about. And honestly, my like TLDR at the end of this is that not really a lot changed. They nerf a couple very particular outside stuff, and they gave us very little when it comes to balance changes. Like, I think the same builds, besides a couple that were abusing Vengeant Cascade, are going to be all the same. We might get some new stuff that'll happen with, say, like Sanctum coming back, as well as the new stuff from the new league. Maybe some of the Vol side zones have some like cool uniques or something like that. But other than that, not really much has changed, honestly. So remember, boys, if you enjoy this content, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to YouTube channel, hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest videos, and stay safe out there in Ray class. And I'll see you guys in the next video.